Now, at the start of the new school year in September 2019, French schools will have a whole new influx of pupils. The president says he wants the compulsory age when schooling should begin brought down to the age of 3. Emmanuel Macron made the announcement a few weeks ago, saying he firmly believes that the sooner children are sat in front of a blackboard, the better the chances are that they'll succeed in life and be better integrated in society. Well, to give us his perspective on the Macron government's latest schooling idea, I'm joined here on set by Eric Charbonnier, an education expert at the OECD here in Paris. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. First of all, the vast majority of French school children already begin their schooling at around the age of 3, going to nursery. So what's the big difference here with this reform plan?
I think it's a symbol. You know, for many years, France invested in secondary education, and they have forgotten that maybe the beginning of the inequalities start at early ages. So by having compulsory age at age 3, it's a good symbol for teachers. It shows that early childhood education is important, but as you said, it's not a revolution. More should be done to improve the working condition of teachers, for example, and having compulsory age at age 3 is not sufficient today.
Many people might be watching saying that the age of 3 is far too young for children to be going to school. Would you agree?
No. I think you see all the study research about brain sensitivity shows that you can start social relation, numeracy, languages at age 3, but you need to keep the learning adapted to the age of children. That means you need to play, to use music, to dance. To be teacher in early childhood education, it's not the same job as to be teacher in primary education.
On an international scale, just where do French school children currently stand? Is there a reasoning behind this reform that maybe French school children are lagging behind their international partners?
Yeah, what is interesting, this is when you look at the PISA study assessment at age 15, France is at the level of the average, but the level of inequalities is the highest among the OECD countries. And you see in the other international assessments that the beginning of the difficulties, it's really early childhood education, primary, just a statistic. First grade of primary education, you have 20% of the children who know approximately 200 words, while the other 80% knows more than 1,000 words. So you see there's many inequalities in the French education system. It's why it's important to do the reform at the early stages.
What, in your view, is the exact motivation behind Macron and his government for bringing in this reform? He's spoken of wanting to improve social integration, but also tackle radicalization.
Yes, it's also one challenge. France has underinvested in primary education, early childhood education for many years. If you look at OECD statistics, you see that expenditure per children is 15% lower than OECD average in primary, 37% above the average in secondary education. So we want to invest in disadvantaged school, in finally the level of education where no sufficient reform has been made in the past.
I want to quote some findings from a report published in 2015 from the National Bureau of Economic Research. They found that children who started school later are more likely to be more attentive in class. That's the case in Sweden and Estonia, two of the world's most academically successful countries. Is Macron is his focus off? Should he be following more of a Scandinavian model?
No, I think in Scandinavia now the children are also attending early childhood education early, but what makes the difference in Nordic countries is teachers are really well prepared. And in France, you know that teachers who will work in early childhood education or primary education have exactly the same initial teacher training. And that's maybe a mistake. If you want to have a good education system, you need to have good teachers who are able to adapt their learning to the age of children.
You've mentioned teachers there. Just how will French teachers and schools cope in general with these changes that Macron's planning to bring in?
There's no sufficient reform about the teaching profession. That's the key challenge for the French education system, to have a good initial teacher education, to have also access to professional development, and also for teachers who will work in early childhood education, you need to know that there's 23 children per teacher in early childhood education. The OECD average is 14. This is one of the highest proportion, and it's difficult to have good learning condition if there's a classroom size who is too big.
In just what areas are French school children lagging behind? Is it in reading or writing, or is it in maths or science?
They are on the average. The problem is really the inequalities. You have 1/3 of children who are really good and 20% who have some big difficulties, and that's the big problem.
And is that related to geography or to social?
That's in all the aspects: numeracy, languages, and also the well-being, social, emotional skills. You know, early childhood education, you need to start initiation to languages, to numeracy, but also social relations, citizenship. It's really important too.
But in terms of, you were mentioning inequalities, is there a trend there? Are there certain areas of France that are more unequal to others? Or?
Inequalities is on every aspect. If you come from a disadvantaged family, you have less chance to succeed in the French education system, to be good in mathematics, to be good in languages, etc., etc. That's really the big problem of the French education system today, and it's why Macron decided to make some reform on early childhood education, but also on primary education, because inequalities are starting in France at early ages.
Okay, Eric Charbonnier from the OECD, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us there for our perspective slot.